Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing well. My name is Michael Chapman, Product Development Manager here at Genova Diagnostics, part of the Medical Affairs team. And just wanted to first say thank you so much for joining us on these live broadcasts, and hope you've been enjoying the clinical content that this team has been giving you. Hope you've been enjoying the clinical pearls. And also wanted to just say that this is Medical Laboratory Professionals Week, as what we call Lab Week around here. So a big shout out to all the lab workers out there. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and just all of our healthcare workers in general. Just thank you so much for everything that you guys are doing. It can't putting your lives on the line and for our particular health and well-being. Thank you so much. Can't say enough about that. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about mitochondrial dysfunction. I think mitochondrial dysfunction is a really important and interesting topic because if you look in the literature, it's really associated with just about every single clinical condition that I can think of. It's associated with cardiovascular disease, cancer, chronic pain syndromes like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, fatty liver, mood disorder. I mean, the list goes on and on when it comes to mitochondrial dysfunction. And I think it really goes hand in hand with what Lenore so eloquently described yesterday when it comes to organic acid testing, because what we're looking at on organic acid testing is all these different biochemical pathways, and it tells us about, like Lenore was saying, needs for particular nutrients. How well a particular molecule is flowing down a pathway and turning into a next molecule. That's done by an enzyme, and like Lenore was talking about, one of those enzymes is involved in cellular energy production. How pyruvate is turned into acetyl-CoA, and that can give us some insight into needs for nutrients like B1, B2, B3, or minerals. And all that information is kind of churned up, and that's how we are able to make nutrient recommendations based on organic acid testing, on amino acid testing. That's one of the major values of those tests. But the other thing is that these molecules have their own cellular function as well. And if we know about that cellular function, then that can tell us how well things are moving. And when it comes to mitochondrial function or mitochondrial dysfunction, by looking at these analytes that are involved in the mitochondria, it really tells us how well this process is going. So if we know about things like acetyl-CoA, that's going to tell us a whole host of different knowledge and information. So let's start from there. Acetyl-CoA serves as this branch point, and it comes from different things in our diet like fats, carbohydrate, and protein, and it ends up turning into other things downstream. So one endpoint is ketosis. So we have on an organic acid test a biomarker for ketone production. Acetyl-CoA also goes down the HMG-CoA pathway, which turns into fats or is involved in fat synthesis. So that's another end destination for acetyl-CoA. But if the cell needs energy, what happens to acetyl-CoA is it comes down into the Krebs cycle. Now, that might sound a little bit scary, might give you some flashbacks to biochemistry classes. You don't need to memorize all the steps of the Krebs cycle all over again. But what's important is that if you're doing an organic acid test, you're actually getting a lens into how well the Krebs cycle is functioning and how well the mitochondria are functioning. So if you're looking at these different analytes in the Krebs cycle, what you're seeing is any bumps and bruises along the way. So acetyl-CoA comes down into the Krebs cycle, which spins around and around. I don't have a particular prop for this like some of my awesome colleagues do, but the Krebs cycle spins around and shoots off these electrons. And that's what's responsible for contributing energy to the electron transport chain in the mitochondria to make ATP. And this is the whole process, right? So if you start to see that there's a lot of abnormalities occurring in that citric acid cycle, that can give you a little bit of a lens into how well these mitochondria are functioning. Furthermore, there's another interesting element on an organic acid test that can tell you about mitochondrial function. Fats turn into acetyl-CoA by a process called beta oxidation. And beta oxidation occurs with the help of a carnitine shuttle magnesium, and B2. So what can happen is that if there's a problem in any of those elements, if there's a problem with carnitine availability in the carnitine shuttle, if there's a problem with B2 or magnesium availability, you're going to have a sluggish beta oxidation process. So what happens? What's the result of that? Well, there's another process called omega oxidation. And so if beta oxidation doesn't work appropriately, you're going to have more of this omega oxidation occurring. And that spits out two metabolites that are measured on an organic acid test, adipic acid and subearic acid. So if those two biomarkers are elevated, that's another indicator, both clinically and in the literature, for concerns around mitochondrial function, or what we call as mitochondrial dysfunction, as we talked about. Those can be indicators for or clinical correlatives to all these different chronic diseases. So on an organic acid test, you're getting all that information about nutritional evaluation, needs for B2, B3, B1, minerals, all these different things, but you're also getting a lens into cellular processes, which is something that's so cool about an organic acid test. And today we're talking about mitochondrial function. You can look for problems around the citric acid cycle, all those different metabolites. You can look for problems with beta oxidation leading to high adipic acid and subearic acid. And that's just one little area of the organic acid test. On the organic acid test, we're also looking at neurotransmitter function. We're looking at vitamin pathways. We're looking at branch chain amino acid breakdown and all the different places. We're looking at methylation. It's just insane, all the different cellular pathways that we're looking at with this testing. So if you're interested in that, if you want to learn more, if you're interested in how this applies clinically to my patients, you can certainly look on our website for some of the resources. You can call 1-800-522-4762. You can email us info@gdx.net to get more information. The cool thing about this testing, and I think about what's called the one test, or the optimal nutrition evaluation, which is a combination organic acid test and amino acid test. It also includes markers for oxidative stress, which when there's increased oxidative stress, this puts an added burden on the mitochondria and how well they function. So that's another component of getting mitochondrial evaluation all on this one test, the optimal nutrition evaluation. And that's a urine test. So you can log on and you can order that particular test on one of your patients. It's sent directly to their patient, or you can drop ship directly to your patients. They collect the urine sample, send it back to us, and you get all that incredible information. You also get to call us up and talk to us to go over all the results, not only as it relates to mitochondrial dysfunction, nutritional need, but we talk about other biochemical pathways that might be interesting to you. And one last thing too to talk about, we also have a podcast, a Genova podcast called The Lab Report. We had a new episode drop today where we had here we go. I do have a prop. It's on Instagram. It's backwards. So there's for Instagram. We talked to Dr. Patrick Hanaway today. We had a really great conversation about all the work that Institute for Functional Medicine is doing around the COVID-19 pandemic and all the different materials that they're putting together. So check that out. That's on iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. It's called The Lab Report. Again, we talked to Dr. Patrick Hanaway. We've got some really great episodes coming out next week, and maybe I'll get into something more like methylation or another cellular process, because if you look at the wall behind me, I love getting into the biochemistry. Hopefully you do too, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for checking us out again, and we'll talk to you again. Here's where I try to figure out how to end the video. There we go.